This is a demonstration of Wirecast. This is a demonstration of Wirecast. This is a demonstration of Wirecast.
That will be the best fit for our incoming freshman class. So
This
teachers
is a
nominate
demonstration
students
of
who are
Wirecast.
enthusiastic, self-motivated, reliable, and successful in many aspects of high school life. Then applicants are chosen based on their leadership potential, a personal statement they write, and a performance in a group interview. And these three categories help us determine who really has what it takes to support the varied needs of the incoming grade 9 students. We strive to create a group with varying levels of physical and academic abilities, language skills, ethnic and religious backgrounds, and life experiences. Once we have recruited our ideal membership, we have them attend over 10 hours of training over 2 days in August prior to the opening of school. And this training focuses not only on running a successful and fun orientation, but really on leadership skills that can be used for the tenure of their involvement in Link Crew and beyond. So I feel so fortunate to work with some of the most generous and enthusiastic students at Hall High School. Not only is it rewarding to see them make a difference in the lives of their 9th graders, but to really see them flourish as leaders and change makers is really remarkable. So I would like to introduce several of our leaders and 9th graders so that they can share details of the different aspects of our year-long program. Thank you.
Hi, my name is Joy. I'm a junior at Hall, and I wanted to be a Link leader because I moved to West Hartford in the 5th grade, and being new was really difficult at times. I wanted to make sure incoming freshmen felt as comfortable as possible while transitioning from such a small school to a big, more wider community.
This is a demonstration
as an 8th grader
of
at King Philip Middle School,
Wirecast.
I was a web leader, which is basically Link, but for middle schoolers, and it helped me to gain leadership skills that I use in Link and in the classroom and outside of it as well. I can tell how reassuring it is to see a friendly face in the hallways when I see the students in my advisory. They just seem really relieved and excited to see someone that they know. I even knew some freshmen from my web advisory when they came in as freshmen, so I think seeing a friendly face really takes the edge off of such a new experience.
This is a demonstration of Wirecast.
Hi. Whoa, okay. My name is Aidina Tashmuhamedov. I migrated here 7 years ago, so I came from a country called Kyrgyzstan, and it's in Middle Asia. I came here with no English. I was in the ESOL program. It was like a program for students who don't know English get to learn English. I got help from it in middle school, so from elementary school 5th grade to 8th grade. When I came to high school, 9th grade, I was all by myself. I didn't take ESOL program. I studied English all by myself. I got help from teachers too. I chose to be a Link Crew leader because I wanted to gain more confidence, and I wanted to step up my, I guess, confidence skill, kind of. And I I stepped out of my comfort zone, which was good. I also wanted to know what it's like to be a leader.
This is a
And also,
demonstration
it's been
of
amazing. I met a
Wirecast.
lot of new people, met new friends, made new friends. I became more socialized, and that is how I kind of learned English as well. And yeah, we have two link crew activities that we do for freshmen. One of them is tailgate. It is held during our varsity football game, and it is like a party with food. So freshmen come to the tailgate game to feel connected, show school spirit, get involved in the school community, and socialize. And the other activity
This is a
Cocoa
demonstration
and
of
Crayon.
Wirecast.
So before midterm, students come to the after-school activity for their academic support, whether it can be like math, English, science, history. While studying, they enjoy drinking hot cocoa and socialize.
Hi, I'm Dylan. I'm a senior at Hall High School. There's two reasons why I wanted to be a link crew leader. I moved here in third grade from Southbury, Connecticut, and then also I went to Bristow, which is the smaller middle school. So I know what
This
it's
is a
like to move
demonstration of
and not know
Wirecast.
anyone and to not have any friends when you first get here and have to immediately meet new people and make new connections once you get to school. And then also coming into Hall from the smaller middle school, we only had about 100 kids in our class, and then in Hall we have like about 400 now. So that step up in amount of students that we had in our class also was a big transition. So knowing what it's like to have that, to take that big step, I wanted to be
This
that
is a
helping hand
demonstration of
coming into
Wirecast.
Hall. So I would say my experience in being a link crew leader has been enjoyable, and it's been a great time getting to know and connect with all the freshmen. So link crew, isn't just a one and done deal. For example, after orientation, it's not over. We make sure to keep a strong connection with our freshmen throughout the whole year. We do this by being present in their advisory, and that happens every other Wednesday. So we end up seeing them about twice a month. In this time, we have with
This
them
is
an
a
advisory. We
demonstration
facilitate
of
activities with their
Wirecast.
advisor, like trivia, to influence cooperation among them. And we also let them ask questions they may have about the school. And we also take the time to talk about several clubs and sports that Hall has to offer them, and we see if they find any interest in any of them, and encourage them to get involved. Thank you.
Hi, my name is Anya, and I'm a junior at Hall. I had a really hard time in ninth grade adjusting to high school, as well as just getting a handle on the school system in
This
general.
is a
And
demonstration
being
of
able to lean on my
Wirecast.
link crew leaders and teachers and guidance counselors meant the world to me. So I wanted to be that guide for the freshmen this year. And I joined Link Crew just to be able to give that valuable experience to somebody else, because it meant so much to me, and I didn't want to forego that for somebody else. And with the homerooms, it's just as important to find freshmen you like outside of that group. I
This
have a
is
lot
a
of co-ed classes, so
demonstration of
I'm with a lot of
Wirecast.
different grade levels. And I met her in my Intro to Foods class. And I am not a very outgoing person normally, and I was sitting alone at one of the tables, and she was kind of sitting somewhat alone, kind of drifting off. And I'm like, that person seems like I could talk to her for a little bit. And we ended up being really good friends, and I pester her at lunch every day. So I think Link Crew is more than just giving the freshmen a helping hand at the beginning of the year. It's also being
This
able
is
to
a
be a role model
demonstration
and
of
someone they can always
Wirecast.
talk to in any situation. Thank you.
My name is Sana. I am a freshman, and I just kind of moved here from Harlem. This is like really new for me, as like in Harlem we didn't really have such many people in our school and a really big school. So when I came here, I was kind of like very antisocial.
This is a
But then I met
demonstration of
her,
Wirecast.
and she definitely helped me get out more, start to express myself, and help me emotionally be prepared for the school and what all the stuff it could offer me. She was basically like my Jiminy Cricket throughout this whole school year so far.
Hello, I'm Nathan Miller, a senior at Hall, and this is my second year in Link Crew, hence the cool shirt. I applied to become a leader because I came from Magnet Middle School in East Hartford and had no
This is
friends,
a
no connections,
demonstration
and no
of
idea what was ahead of me in
Wirecast.
high school. I thought the program was extremely beneficial and comforting as a freshman, and I wanted to share my advice and give back as a leader. Being a leader has been rewarding, in part because I get to meet a lot of freshmen and get to know them personally, but more because I know I'm having a real positive impact on their lives. This year, 15 of us leaders took a day of classes off to attend a regional conference of Link Crew leaders at Lewis Mills High. Last year, Hall was a host school, and it's been really interesting
This
to
is a
experience the event on both
demonstration
sides.
of Wirecast.
This was my second year attending such a conference, and I truly think they get better every year. A bunch of participating schools with students from Massachusetts, New York, all over, are brought together to interact and share our ideas as leaders. Coming together with all of this inviting, energetic spirit was not only a refreshing experience of that leadership mentality, but also an environment in which we made real connections with complete strangers within an hour. I know I speak for the rest of the leaders when I say we truly
This
valued
is a
the experience
demonstration of
and are excited
Wirecast.
to deliver the same kind of energy throughout the year.
Hi, I'm Maya Miller, and I'm a freshman at Hall High School. I came from KP, King Philip Middle School, and I think the Link Crew Leader program, it's very valuable and helpful. High school was Hall is a whole lot bigger than KP, so when you step in it, it's huge, it's scary, there's a ton of people. But the Link Crew leaders really helped it make it
This
not
is a
as
demonstration of
terrifying.
Wirecast.
And I don't know, I like to wave at people, at seniors who are not my brother in school because I have more connections now. Turn it off.
Thank you. Does anybody have any questions? Amanda?
I just wanted to comment on something. First of all, you're terrific presenters,
This is
so
a
thank you for that.
demonstration of
As a
Wirecast.
parent of a freshman, I've just been privy to see your work, and I can tell you that it made such a difference. The difference between how my child was feeling on Sunday and how he was feeling on the first day of school because of your work was very noticeable. And it's very reassuring as a parent, too, to know that there's people like you throughout the school who are available, and people know that you're open to being approached for things, because there could be things that come up in people's lives
This
and
is a
they might not want to go to an
demonstration
adult
of
and they'd
Wirecast.
much rather go to a student. So I really, as a parent, I really appreciate what you're doing, and I think that the leadership skills that you are acknowledging in yourself by doing this are just so impressive. So thank you for that.
Yeah, I just want to echo what Amanda said. Back in 8th grade, when my oldest was in 8th grade, as a parent, you're apprehensive about high school because it's freshman year, it's big, just all the things you said.
This is a demonstration of Wirecast.
The web crew really, the Link crew, she did web too. But she also did web and Link. But the Link crew was there, and I have 3 kids, and so that apprehension just went away. So when my son came in freshman year this year, he, there was no worries. It was just simple. I knew you guys. I knew the Link crew was going to be there. I know the teachers were going to be there for support. So it's a great program. As I said, my daughter did it for 2 years, and
This
she
is a
enjoyed doing it as
demonstration
well. She
of
liked being part of
Wirecast.
it. So it's an amazing program, and it really just opens up that freshman year and then welcoming those kids in there, those students, and it's a tremendous value to the town, and you guys should all be proud of yourselves.
West Hartford's often mentioned as a great school district for lots of reasons regarding our superintendent likes to talk about how we rank, and that's always fine and good. This is one of those things that doesn't show up in a test score anywhere, and it's just
This
what
is a
makes me so proud of this district.
Wirecast.
I've been privileged to know about this program since its inception, just through my association with staff and your advisor. And I don't think it can be overstated enough how much work you guys and the staff put in to make this a successful program, and how it's grown every year. And it's been so impressive that just, this is what school is really about. You can study hard, and obviously you should, But these are the life lessons I think that you'll take with you. And this
a
is something the district I think
demonstration of
should just be
Wirecast.
so proud of, to have such young student ambassadors like yourselves and great faculty that advise you to make this such a home run. Because as someone that also was new to a school in 9th grade, we didn't have this back in the old days. And yeah, it's really hard, to come into a new school and not know anybody and just have to, assimilate and find your way around a really big place and just be kind of in awe of it. And so just kudos to all of you and what you do, and just this program and just making this a success, because it's these kind of things I think that, just make our town proud
This is a
of you guys. So
demonstration
thank you.
of
Thank you very much.
Wirecast.
I just want to say, I echo all that has been shared. I'm not going to speak too much because for some reason I have a knot in my throat. You all have brought happy tears to me. So very proud of all of you. I am a mother of a 6th grader, so she's not in middle school yet, but certainly have heard about the web crew, and some of you made reference to being a part of that. And that very much comforted me, very similar to what Amanda was describing, because I am one of those mommies who just was a little worried. So very comforted knowing about the web crew, and certainly look forward
This
to,
is a
and it's comforting
demonstration
hearing
of
about the Link crew.
Wirecast.
So very proud of each and every one of you, not only for what you're giving to the young people, but I also heard in some shape, form, or fashion you describe how it's benefiting you as well, in terms of leadership skills, in terms of building confidence, and those are certainly characteristics and attributes that are going to carry you very, very far in life, because you will certainly have other situations where you go into environments where you may not know anyone. And you are going to have to find ways of networking and reaching out, and certainly remembering who you are and having confidence in yourself in spite of.
This
So
is a
very, very proud of
demonstration of
you as a
Wirecast.
board member and also as a mommy.
Before you guys leave the table, I want to shout out to Shelley for having the for being able to attend the conference, and we talk about those things at the board table, but to be able to recognize this program and bring it back to this district and have taken off with it for the past 9 years. I
This
can
is a
speak
demonstration of
from experience
Wirecast.
because my daughters too participated in Link Crew. And to you, is it Christina? Christina, you and the rest of the coordinators that continue to produce these fabulous leaders, I mean, shout out to you and shout out for what you all continue to do. And that's why West Hartford continues to shine in this state. Thank you. Let's give them another round of applause.
This is a demonstration of Wirecast.
Next on the agenda item is our public communications, and I do believe we have 2 people signed up. So the first person is Henry Egan, or it looks like both Henry and Matt. So I'm just going to go through the rules, so go to that podium there.
This is a demonstration of Wirecast.
So the board members do not respond to your comments, and you have 3 minutes per individual. So 21 minutes per subject matter, which we won't go that far tonight. But Charlotte will hold up a yellow card. A red card. Do you have yellow back there? Yep, okay, so yellow would be at the 1 minute mark, and then red is when your time is up. But if you're wrapping up, that's okay, and we'll
This is a demonstration
yield
of
some leniency
Wirecast.
to the youth there.
Hello, West Hartford Board of Education members. My name is Henry Egan, and I am a 5th grader at Webster Hill Elementary School. I wish that you make the following policy changes. I wish to increase recess time from 30 minutes to 1 hour. I ask for this for many reasons, and I have evidence to support them. I will list the following reasons. Recess is important for kids. It helps them actively use their
This is a
brain.
demonstration
Having
of
more recess would
Wirecast.
help the brain get more of a refresher. That way, when we go outside, we'll be more focused on our work. For some kids, organizing a game is hard and will take up to 5 minutes. If that happens, we only have 20 minutes to play. If we have only a little recess, kids would look forward to that much. The effect would probably be we would not be focusing that much. Other schools
is a
have tried
demonstration of
adding more
Wirecast.
recess, and these are some of the effects. A school in Texas tripled children's recess time, and every person's test score went up. Schools all over the country have done this to similar effect. Schools in other countries have more than 1 hour of recess, and its effects is kids are focusing more in class, and there is a positive attitude all around the school. Thank you.
This is a demonstration
Thank you,
of
young man.
Wirecast.
Hi, I'm Matt Egan. I'm Henry's father. I know you don't comment till the end. I just want to say it's a school night and he's got a bedtime, so we're not going to be here for your comments. But I'm hopeful that, I have provided my email. I'm hopeful that this board, when it does choose to comment, or, that we can have whatever discussion takes place on the, and I know that you're all
This
very
is
proud
a
of being data driven in this
demonstration of
district.
Wirecast.
He's got data. I'm just saying. Thank you.
Yes, so we don't respond at all to the public comment period or public comments. You could always follow up with an email to the board email.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, both of you. Moving to the next agenda item, which is unfinished business, and I don't believe we have
This is a
any.
demonstration of
And then we're
Wirecast.
moving to new business, which is revising the 2019-2020 school calendar by canceling school on April 28th, 2020, in the interest of student safety. The recommendation is that the Board of Education approve the recommendation that on Tuesday, April 28th, 2020, school will not be in session due to Connecticut's primary elections. May I have a motion?
This is a demonstration of
And a second?
Wirecast.
Second.
And discussion and questions around this issue.
All right, so you have before you in your board packet on page 2 the current school calendar for 2019-2020 as adopted. Tuesday, April 28th is primary day in the state of Connecticut, and really, as we've become more security conscious and we've gone through time, and
This
these
is a
calendars are
demonstration
adopted
of
enough in advance
Wirecast.
that primary wasn't even set at that point, that really it's come to the point where first it was a discussion matter, and now after discussing it with the principals in the building and our head of security, it's more, I would say, my recommendation that we aren't in session on April 28th, because in the buildings that we have voting taking place in, we can't ID people as we do. We can't ask for identification as
This
somebody's
is a
going in to vote.
demonstration
And
of
no matter how much
Wirecast.
we secure an off-site area, people coming and going from our building during the school day from the general public, while we welcome people to our schools, the fact is we've invested so much in security that to shift for that one day doesn't seem prudent. So really then the question becomes, would that day be would we just treat it as a snow day? Whereas the last day of school
This
is now
is a
scheduled for
demonstration of
Thursday,
Wirecast.
June 11th. The last day of school now becomes Friday, June 12th. Or would it be a day, one less day of school for kids and professional development for the teachers? And again, that's under your purview. Both of these have happened before. So it's really a board decision. Agreeing to take one day off of the school year for kids, that also sets a precedent that we have 182
This
days
is a
for a
demonstration
reason,
of Wirecast.
and haven't shortened it to 181. So I leave that up to you, but those are the parameters of what I went forward with, and I think I mentioned it. But the principals are unanimous that have those buildings that they don't feel comfortable with having school in session on a day when people are coming in to vote and holding signs outside and everything else that takes place at a polling place. And we don't want to interfere with the electoral process either. And it is difficult, even on I should put this in, and we've had this discussion.
Is a
People have been on the board
demonstration of
a long
Wirecast.
time for major elections. Even when we have professional development on voting days, the problem is the parking lots of those buildings. Even when we move people around, we don't have enough spaces to move people to where there's no voting. And there are times where the perception of cars being in a parking lot, even though we've blocked off large areas of no parking and we put up signs, every time I've basically gotten phone calls from people saying, there's too many cars there, there's no parking.
Demonstration of Wirecast.
While I've been standing in an empty lot area saying there is parking. So it is something that I do believe even with the teachers. So for example, this election day in November, we're actually using the parking lot of the former UConn West Hartford campus because we need all of our teachers together, professional development. We're doing a full day that Rosina and the EDC have put together with an unbelievable program
This is a
for professional
demonstration
development
of
for our
Wirecast.
teachers, centered around cultural competency. And we're going to have people park off-site there and bus people there at the beginning of the day, the end of the day, which is a great solution. It's a little bit extra cost, which is worth it at that time, but just to show kind of that traffic pattern. But if we're not doing the same thing for everybody, we're trying to center it, that puts people in different buildings and inevitably runs into where the voting is. So that's background, that's kind of where we are.
So
This
I
is a
probably am
demonstration
guilty of
of
that phone call
Wirecast.
to Tom at one point. Because I sat on the board at that time. I don't know if anyone else was here, but the perception of parking, like Tom said, he stood out there and it was empty. Well, I went in and the perception was that it was really busy and that parking was going to be difficult. And that, it would maybe turn a couple voters away, and we want to avoid that.
This is
So,
a demonstration of Wirecast.
I thought about it as an in-service day when we started talking about this, and I think in my mind it has to be treated as a snow day, but I kind of want to segue off of that, Tom, because it's after April 1st. And just say we don't have any snow days. Is there any way of going back? And can we adjust it somehow? Or if
Okay,
we have
so
too many snow days or something,
That's part two of this.
This is a demonstration
The truth
of
is, to plan
Wirecast.
professional development takes, Rosina's been working on this one day for a year now. So to do it well, to do it to react in March and say, okay, we're going to have professional development for 950 people in 3 weeks, put something together, we want it to be worthwhile. You lead to another discussion that some other communities have grappled with, and we haven't as a board yet. The state
This is
did
a
change
demonstration of
the law about the
Wirecast.
last day of school. So that, not the last day of school, because that's the big difference, graduation day. And this affects mostly those places that have to rent off-site a site and lock in when graduation day is. We graduated both of our high schools, so you've seen some places already vote on when graduation day will be now, and the state has said, unless it's something extreme, that
is a
will be
demonstration of
graduation day.
Wirecast.
Kids could still go after, but seniors would be forgiven those days if we had 4 snow days, 5 snow days. The difficulty with that in West Hartford as far as setting a day, I should save this discussion for another time. The difficulty with it is all the things that go on with graduation in West Hartford and the fact that we have safe grad for our seniors in our buildings that night. Because if you had, now you'd be having safe grad coinciding with exams for other students or even with
This is a
regular school days
demonstration
for
of
other students. And
Wirecast.
the way we close off parts of the building would make it very difficult. But so it kind of ties into Mark's question about the last day, but I don't want to get off on that tangent, but I can answer those questions attached to this too.
So having heard that, so just for edification, that I'll support this 100%. We talked about it earlier, and this is the discussion, but my point of view is that, the safety of the kids are one of our first and foremost considerations.
This is a demonstration
And,
of Wirecast.
So having a snow day, I think, to Tom's recommendation, is the best thing for our school system.
So, thank you, Tom, for a very complete presentation there. You pretty much answered all my questions. Way to go. That's awesome. I mean, it breaks my heart in a way. People just coming to exercise their civic duty. But there are so many variables, and these are not regular times.
This is a
We have to
demonstration of
keep the safety in
Wirecast.
mind. And that thing, I came in here tonight thinking, yeah, it's got to be PD. But your explanation of that, and the thing about the full parking lots, I get that in a heartbeat. Every one of us, I think, has stood outside a polling place holding signs, and we've seen the ebb and flow of traffic. I remember back to my days at Webb Hill when we had voting there, and just how the parking lot would fill. And at the PTO, we used to sell slices of pizza, and we made a killing. It was great, but that was a different time. And unfortunately, we can't do this.
demonstration of
I
Wirecast.
agree that I think a snow day would be the way to go.
Sure, I'll go. I agree with the recommendation, especially I've noticed a difference as poll standing the last two special elections. Ran into a couple of things that did start to go wrong, and it was frightening as a parent, I think, to be standing there with kids walking by. So I think there's a time we might have felt differently, but I agree.
This is a demonstration of
would vote
Wirecast.
for a professional development day because I think the teachers they were expecting to be at work anyway, and I think there's always good room for professional development. I think adding on a snow day, the last day of school at the end when it's hot and people may be leaving for vacations and doing things already, I don't think that would be as productive as if we had a professional development day. So I think that a day off for the students, but to allow the teachers to gather, have
This
time
is a
together. I
demonstration
think in a
of
primary
Wirecast.
election, people who vote in a primary are going to vote in a primary, and I don't think that the effects on traffic warrant adding another day to what could potentially be many snow days. And I think we all know the last day of school is not, it's fun, but it's not terribly productive. So that would be my position.
I, too, am very much in favor of not having school that
This
day
is a
for the primary reason
demonstration
being
of
for safety
Wirecast.
purposes. I will say that I initially was leaning towards a professional development day, making it that day, and I still am leaning towards that. I do have a question, though. Recognizing the concerns you've raised, which certainly are valid ones in terms of traffic flow and parking, and we have 16 schools in town, 9 of which I believe are polling sites. Of those other 7 schools, five are polling sites. Of those other 11 schools, is it possible for, if it were to be a PD day,
This
for
is a
those
demonstration
11
of
schools that are not being
Wirecast.
used, to be used for that purpose?
The issue is our biggest schools are our polling sites. So the places, we can't put Conard staff at Morley or at one of that's the issue, is that Conard and Hall are our 2 biggest lots, our 2 biggest spots, our 2 places where we have the most parking, but they're also, when you put in the polling location factor. So that's the issue, is that we have done that in the past. We've had
This
school
is a demonstration
in
of
November.
Wirecast.
We've had PD in November for years, and I've come back to the question, and there's no unanimity on this on the executive team. We go back and forth with this because it becomes really difficult to have all of the high school teachers in the same place with the parking. I mean, because, it takes up a part of a parking lot. And as much as we block it off, the fact is, on those days, there will be athletic
This is a demonstration
contests.
of Wirecast.
Those won't be not happening. So on election day, there's athletic contests. We try to minimize, we try to move it, but so all of a sudden now you introduce cars from 4 to 6 that are parents and everything else. And so the problem, one of the big issues is just timing when cars are there. Certainly we work around it. We have We will continue to, if you
This is a
decide to have it
demonstration
be
of
a professional
Wirecast.
development day, we'll put together great professional development. I will say I will get calls because we do every day, and we plan so long on these parking solutions. Andy, Bob Palmer, myself, we go through it, and we go through it with our PD and scheduling and where people will be, and we'll move presenters rather than moving people to try to get it there. And we will have calls about people that saw the cars in the parking lot
This is a
or cars pulling
demonstration of
in,
Wirecast.
because it has to start at some point. So if the PD is starting at 8:30 and people are pulling in, and there's that, and we've all dropped off our kids at school, if all the staff is going in at that point and people are seeing it, they may not go in then. And I'm not trying to sway you one way or another. Really, I'm more agnostic on this. I'm just saying that's the reality of the situation. So.
Yeah, just to reiterate too, and if you guys remember, I wanted us to vote. This not a new board,
This is a
because
demonstration
some
of
of us have had that
Wirecast.
experience. Amanda, and I get your point, but the time that we did this, it was tough. People did, civic duty or not. You get an elderly person there at 8:30 waiting in line like you do have to drop off at school at 8:30 in the morning. They're going to turn around and not go. And we even, I think through the CIP funding down at KP, the handicap parking is actually quite a ways from the
This is a
school, and there wasn't even signs
demonstration
for
of
them to be able to pull up in front. And it was so in disrepair, it had to get fixed because the elderly couldn't even walk into KP to actually vote with their walkers and wheelchairs because it was so uneven, and the school fixed it. So for someone that's been through this before, I just kind of wanted, and the reason I wanted us to vote, because we have a little more experience on this side than the new one in November, the new board in November. So, because those of us have experienced it, people will turn away, civic duty or not.
This
When you get a
is a
line like in the
demonstration of
morning at Hall or
Wirecast.
Conard, I've never done Conard in the morning, but I'm assuming it's the same as Hall. People will get frustrated. They got to get to work. It's 8:30. Boom. They got to, so the less we can do, or the more we can do to help alleviate that, because we're in a position, they're using our buildings, we're in a position to make that voting go smoothly. So, we're Board of Ed, it's really not our purview for voting, but yet we can help with that process by not having the teachers in school. Because we did it
This is
once,
a
we had the
demonstration of
professional
Wirecast.
development, and it wasn't that smooth. It wasn't the process that we really would like, and all the planning that went on around it. So I just want to bring that to light because, I want to bring that purview to this board because maybe some of us haven't experienced it. So just another thought.
2008 was it used to be we had them and it wasn't, the 2008 election was the
This
time where
is a
we got,
demonstration
and
of
that's the
Wirecast.
question of turnout. And we don't know if you could guarantee me X number in turnout, I'd say, well, then I don't think that that's going to be an issue. And again, we'll deal with it. We'll make plans. I'm not trying to present a catastrophe in the making. This is just the reality of the situation that you're weighing. That's all.
I had a quick question in terms of logistics, in terms of professional development day
This
for
is a
the teachers at
demonstration of
either Conard or
Wirecast.
Hall. When the parking that's assigned for them, when that parking is all filled, that overflow goes to the streets, correct? Or no?
Yeah, I mean, if that parking gets filled, it goes to the streets. So this is the issue so we're having all of our teachers for a great day of professional development this election day. Picture convocation. And we can't do that when it's election day. That's why we're parking off-site at a different site
This
with
is a
buses and everything
demonstration
else.
of
But this
Wirecast.
plan has been in the works since we're talking 9 months of planning right now because we had to get approval because it's not UConn West Hartford anymore, it's Ideanomics, we had to go through them. So there's a lot of ducks in this row for this plan for this November, sorry.
Tom, you mentioned it, but I'm not in that circle either, is when they announce
This
days,
is a
like April
demonstration
28th
of Wirecast.
for an election day? Or how far out do we know that? Because when we're planning calendars, how can we, when, how?
It shifts based on states. Sometimes states want to jump other states. There are some that are just now finalizing when they're voting in primaries in 4 months. And so, especially when it's tied around presidential, which really we're talking about primaries for presidential, we won't know when we're
This is a
voting. When
demonstration
we're voting
of
on the calendar for the
Wirecast.
2024 election, we won't know what the primary date is. Yeah.
It just occurs to me that as we make this vote, it's for all of us, I think it's our sincere hope that on April 28th, people will look at it and say, that was unnecessary. There was no need to do that because nothing happens. That's certainly our hope. So when the day comes and the Facebook comments start to complain, we had our hearts in the best place,
This
I think,
is
when
a
we made our vote.
demonstration of Wirecast.
I'll just add one other quick thing. I mean, it seems like the common sense thing to me is the snow day because, if we're talking about safety in our schools, which going back again to when I was in school, I remember bumping into people that were voting, but that was 30 odd years ago. If we're really, speaking to the whole safety thing, that's why we don't want our kids in school. As someone whose wife teaches in the schools, I just have a little bit of a problem with a PD day. For the exact same reason. It's like, well, if we're
This is
concerned
a
about our kids, why aren't we
demonstration
concerned
of
about our staff in
Wirecast.
the same vein? So the common sense thing is, in this day and age, if we're just being overly cautious like you, hopefully we would never have to, hopefully people would have your reaction, like, why did they even do that? I would prefer that we just make it, maybe a Sunday is a nice way to say late April, but, go enjoy the sun. But, like for parlance, like snow day, because I'm just a little uneasy with the idea of, maybe what the staff thinks, like, oh, so you care about the kids, but we can still be in the schools while strangers are voting, and it just doesn't
This
quite
is a
sit well with me. So
demonstration
that's
of
where I would be leaning.
Wirecast.
That question has come up.
What's interesting is I was leaning towards the PD day as well. And then listening to what you said, Mark, about some of our seniors in town who religiously come out and vote. And also our teachers and staff and our safety of our students. So you're right, because it's not just the safety of our students and our staff, but it's the safety of everybody. And so with what you just provided for all of us, I'm going to change my position and
This
go with
is
the
a
snow day because I
demonstration of
truly believe
Wirecast.
that that's the safest way to go about this for everyone. I'd rather err on the side of safety and caution than to be sorry that, some terrible accident occurred.
And just for edification, I should have pointed out before, the offices will still be open. Administrators will still be there in case there's an issue. We'll still have some security. We always add our own security because there are buildings around the site, not to be intrusive at all, more to be direction. So that helps that there's
This
not
is a
something else going on.
demonstration
There
of
is an office there
Wirecast.
that people can go to if there is an issue.
I just want to say, to be clear, and I appreciate all of the comments that were certainly made. I'll speak for myself, but I think I'm speaking for others as well. The safety of our students is absolutely a priority, as is the staff, which is why the question was asked, is it possible to meet at schools that are not polling sites? So I just want to make sure, for the record, it's known, safety for students and staff is absolutely a priority. That's why we have a discussion to see what other possibilities
This is
are
a demonstration
available.
of Wirecast.
And so with that, I will say, again, as I said from the beginning, I'm in favor of no school that day, recognizing even the option of meeting at another school is not a possibility, then I am in favor of it being a snow day.
So, regrettably, I guess I'm also in favor of not having school on that day. And the reason I say regrettably is I know what a challenge this is for working parents to add yet one more day of no
This
school.
is a
And it's in the
demonstration
same
of
month where we just had
Wirecast.
April vacation and Good Friday, which not everybody gets off from work. And so this can be really challenging. So, ideally, we get to the point where we're not using our schools as polling locations at all. And then we can run our schools and not have to worry about how to fit in voting in the same building where we're trying to educate the children and teens of our town. So to that end, I just want to let everyone know that I did have a brief conversation with the mayor to let her know,
This is
just
a
me personally,
demonstration of
I would be
Wirecast.
interested in having the town council take up this issue of maybe doing a study to see if there could be other locations found. We do have Town Hall as a voting location. We have Elmwood Community Center. So if we could find other non-school locations and make it so that in a couple of years, this wouldn't be immediate. If there's going to be a study, then it would have to be a pretty comprehensive study as far as accessibility for people who have disabilities, what buildings are
This
available,
is a
parking.
demonstration of
There'd be a lot
Wirecast.
that would need to be taken into account. But I think ideally, the way we want to move over the next couple of years, just speaking for me, is to not have this issue come up when we have an election. To just go about our business, let people go to work, let people go vote, and have it not interfere with the safety of our students. But I will be voting to move forward with a snow day for that day.
This is a
Just
demonstration
one other thing,
of
Tom, because the way we
Wirecast.
communicate this to our parents is important, right? So I just, talking about, the safety of our students and things like that, I know you're probably already prepared for that, but I think that's a really important aspect of this. If we do take a snow day and why and such, and articulated nicely in different languages and things like that, so.
Yeah, I'm sure they'll hear about it first from Ronnie and WeHud.com.
This is a
And then
demonstration of Wirecast.
we'll have it in the newsletter. We'll have the same message in all the newsletters next time the newsletters go out. And then we'll put it back in, it will appear kind of every month in the newsletters so people that remember. And then much like tomorrow's PSAT day, so the principals do an all-call and they send out emails to everyone, we'll do the same thing ahead of that time too. And we often reach out to local providers, daycare, YMCA, those things to make sure they know
This
that
is a
that's a day they can
demonstration
offer
of
programs.
Wirecast.
Everybody will know in about 20 minutes, right, Ronnie?
Did you want to weigh in on the discussion?
I agree with the notion that we should have no school and that it should be a snow day, because I agree that the safety of students and teachers is important, and I feel that having professional development during the same day as voting would cause a lot of difficulties.
This is a
so I do
demonstration
agree
of
with
Wirecast.
everyone else's statements.
Speaking safety-wise, I agree with what Nina said, and just with the experience that Conard had last year with one of our more serious lockdowns, I think the students would be more apprehensive having people coming in and out of the building not being able to be ID'd. There's no really secure way in ensuring who's going in or out. So yeah, I agree with having the school day off. Thank you.
This is a demonstration of Wirecast.
One follow-up is when we vote on calendars, again, when it comes up naturally, we'll need to have a similar discussion about next November's general election. Well,
Yeah, and I think that's a very different situation from a lot of different standpoints. My one question about this, because, and I hear your point about teacher safety, certainly don't mean to imply that that's not something that I've thought about, because I have. But
This is a demonstration
when
of
you think about the
Wirecast.
voting locations in the schools, are they in common areas or are they closed off because there's also staff there running the polls. I mean, there's people that are part of voting day.
yeah, they're closed off areas, and their areas, I mean, there are rules about what they have to be. There's entry and egress. There's not just fire rules, but there's also all the rules that go into the distance, where it is. So like Conard, it's been
This
moved,
is a
and Conard
demonstration of
historically was in the way
Wirecast.
back, and now it's in the cafeteria closer to that parking lot, which has alleviated some of the parking concerns. But that that first year, oh my God, we had so many complaints because people were used to voting in a certain spot. So those are the things that happen. The other thing is, yes, all of those things are taken into account, and bathrooms are taken into account. but that's an area that we've had issues where people ask where a bathroom is or know where a bathroom is in the building.
Demonstration of
And so they go to
Wirecast.
the bathroom that they know, and that's one of the areas, and with no bad intentions, certainly. It's just those are the areas. So as much as you try to cordon it off, you can't put down barriers, you can't block egress, so people can still go out into the building inevitably. And there's only so much security you can kind of position in those areas.
And do you get the sense that the teachers, like, do the principals feel like the teachers themselves would prefer to have a snow day for that
This is a
interest?
demonstration of Wirecast.
I've learned not to speak for 900 teachers. Yeah, so it took me a while to learn that, by the way. I don't know. There's a couple of experts here. So I don't really know what that answer is. I mean, so I wouldn't want to guess. You know, I think that the principals, if you're in administration, a day is a day, so that's not the bigger issue. There is a question about that timing for PD, being closer to the end, being closer to some other things. That late in April doesn't tend to be a great, all day we're going to sit and meet and talk about your own professional development when there's 4 weeks, 5 weeks left in the school year. We'd make it great. I have every bit of faith in our principals,
Demonstration of
Paul,
Wirecast.
Carrie, Ann, what they'd organize, Rosina. The timing wouldn't be the day I would pick, like, oh, great, we'll do PD on that day, in all honesty.
I guess considering some of those things, I think that thinking about if teachers would rather have that added day at the end of the year when it's hot and we don't have the same student participation, it's not as productive. That's kind of what my mind was going to. But if it, and there are teachers who
This
have
is a
kids in the school
demonstration
systems too,
of
so that creates
Wirecast.
another added layer of childcare. So, if it also doesn't seem like the ideal time to be organizing this, then I would be comfortable doing the snow day also.
Don't feel bad. I've gone back and forth on this also.
Yeah, well, I think, because I have a lot of confidence in our school security in our buildings, and I also think there's people there in voting who are volunteering. So I certainly don't want the community to get the sense that this is not a safe situation, because I feel, very strongly
This
about
is
the
a
fact that it is.
demonstration of
I think that
Wirecast.
people who vote in a primary are very dedicated voters. If it were presidential, I would feel very differently. But the fact is we're going to have school and the people would be parked, so some of those things to me weren't as consequential as, if the teachers are more comfortable with something different, then that's a different story. So.
Just for clarification, so with the snow day, does that depend on how many snow days we actually have, or?
This is a
No, any snow day,
demonstration of
that's one of the
Wirecast.
things I have to explain. It comes up. That's why we've made all of June in diamonds, where we used to just make like the next week, and people would think, well, you can't go past that day. No, we would, if we had 10 snow days, if we had, the October snowstorm hit again, yes, we'd make up all of those days. And that would be a case where then, if something like that happened, yes, that year when we had the October snowstorm, there were things that we talked about during the year
is a
because we almost
demonstration
came
of
to taking
Wirecast.
back part of April vacation. So certainly there are things during the year you can adjust on the fly if extreme things happen. So we're aware of that, but no, those days would be made up otherwise.
Okay, that was good, folks. All right, ready for the vote? All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Oh, no? Oh, right. Right, so the motion, the motion was
This is a demonstration
made and it
of
was seconded and we
Wirecast.
had the discussion. And so what's here on the table is that on Tuesday, April 28th, 2020, school will not be in session due to Connecticut's primary elections. Is there an amendment to that motion?
So it has to be either the in-service or a snow day with, in in-service or the snow day and with no in-service.
Okay, so we can amend this.
Is a
Right, Tom?
demonstration of Wirecast.
I don't. It's a it's
don't
a
think so, but
deliberative point about who schedules that, whether it's me or you. So I don't know that it has to be in the motion. Since you're kind of in agreement, it can be. But you can just say that if you say school will be canceled on April 28th is the motion, that means there's no professional development when school is canceled. So that's
Okay, so we'll amend it as it's recommended here to say that school will be canceled
This
on
is a
Tuesday, April
demonstration of
28th,
Wirecast.
2020, where it will be not in session due to Connecticut's primary elections. Okay? Charlotte? Good? All right, all in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? Hearing none, motion carries. All right, next up is staff communication and reports, where we'll have the superintendent's reports followed by the student reports.
Thank
This
you.
is a demonstration
And in
of
recognition of that
Wirecast.
being one long superintendent's update in some ways, I'll be brief. Today at Sedgwick, I'm sorry, not at Sedgwick, at Charter Oak, we had an issue where we were notified at about 12:40. Eric Dempsey called my cell, said that there was a report of a fire at Charter Oak. Eric, myself, and Rosina immediately began our way over there. And that's the kind of situation where
This is a
we've practiced
demonstration
these
of
kind of things
Wirecast.
enough, but you still wonder how it will happen, because my policy is at that point, I'm not calling the principal because I don't want him taking a phone call from me. I want them doing what they do. But on the way there, Juan had already called me. We're okay. This isn't a true emergency. By the time we got there, one fire truck was already leaving. West Hartford's fire response was excellent. I mean, because we knew immediately, and we left immediately.
This
And by
is
the
a
time we got there, there
demonstration of
were, I think, 3
Wirecast.
ladder trucks and one already leaving. The fire chief, Chief Priest, was there. He and I walked the area together and looked at things. There had never been an ignition. It turned out it was a washing machine that was smoking. There was never fire from the washing machine or anything else, but we have a washing machine off the cafeteria in our buildings. People think, why do you have a washing machine? Because of all the towels and things like that that go through. The kids were outside. Everybody was safe, accounted for. It ended up
This
being like
is
a
a
20-minute fire
demonstration of
drill, how it
Wirecast.
happened, but with real ramifications of what people were hearing on the radio. And we're able to watch the video of how people reacted, went to their spots and everything else. Eric Dempsey and I did that for about a half an hour just to review. And I can say the drills are really working. It was one of the smoother things, and I tip my cap to Juan Melian, who had an email out to his parent community, because that's the other
This
thing.
is a
Anytime something like
demonstration
this
of
happens, if it
Wirecast.
goes out over, a fire call or a police call, the media is immediately there, and if they tweet something like that, then we get parent calls right away, and parents are concerned. And Juan had a message out to his parent community from the time it happened to the email went out less than a half an hour. So just great work from everybody. I'm appreciative of it. It's the second kind of thing we've had like that this year. We had a power outage at Bugby, and things have gone
This
very
is a
well so far.
demonstration of Wirecast.
If I may add to the praise to Principal Milian, he gave us a call to give us a heads up of the email. So that was reassuring, because sometimes you may not check your email till later in the day. So yes, his reaction was wonderful and appreciated.
Thank you, Tom. All right, student reports. Who wants to go first?
Good evening, everyone. Students at Hall have been getting more comfortable with their
is a
daily routines,
demonstration of
and
Wirecast.
seniors are starting or in the midst of post-secondary planning. Currently, we have college representatives coming in every day. Tomorrow, on Wednesday, October 16th, the PSAT will be given to students in grades 9, 10, and 11, and during this time, the senior counseling will be doing workshops for seniors for post-secondary planning.
Also in other news, this Thursday, October 17th, the National Honor Society is hosting a blood drive for students. If you're 17 years or older, you can donate your blood. I'm also excited to report that Spanish teacher
This
Mrs.
is a
Del Cacho received the
demonstration of
University of Chicago
Wirecast.
Outstanding Educator Award, and we're very proud of her accomplishment. And finally, the Hall Muslim Student Coalition is currently sponsoring a school-wide food drive, and students at Hall are looking forward to the rest of the school year. Thank you.
Good evening. Connor is as well settling in. First off, I just want to give congratulations to two of our students who are National History Day Award winners, Marlena Pijolo and Lindsay
This
Moynihan,
is a
who presented their
demonstration
research
of
to the State Department of
Wirecast.
Education. Conard and Hall business students visited the Connecticut Financial Reality Fair at Cheshire High School, where students financed life on their own. Conard and Charter Oak students collaborated for their first session this year on learning American Sign Language on October 10th. Students from Charter Oak, the fourth graders, learned greetings, ABCs, colors, and names. As Nina mentioned, tomorrow is PSAT day for grades 9 through 11, and seniors will be working on their college essays and applications. It is also a full day of
This is a
school.
demonstration of
The
Wirecast.
2019 College Fair will take place next Wednesday, October 23rd, from 6:30 to 8 p.m. in the Conard Cafeteria. Over 150 colleges and universities will be in attendance. The Importance of Being Earnest opens tomorrow at 7:30 to 9 through Saturday at 7 o'clock. Unified Soccer will be held in the main gym on Wednesday nights from 7 to 8 p.m. on October 16th, 23rd, and 30th. The tournament will be Thursday, November 7th from 2:30 to 5:30 p.m.
This is a demonstration
And
of
Conard students will be
Wirecast.
hosting our annual Trick or Treat Street on Friday, October 25th, where children pre-K through third grade are welcomed with adult admission, $3 for children with canned items, and $4 for children without. All donations will be made to the West Hartford Food Pantry. And lastly, our first WeSTEM meeting, which is Women in Science, Technology, and Engineering and Math, will be taking place tomorrow at 2:30, and I'm very excited to see how that will go.
Thank you. Great reports, Nina and Kenya.
This is a demonstration of Wirecast.
Next on the agenda items are staff reports and board discussions. The Smarter Balance results and the background. We're welcoming Mr. Paul Vicinas, Ms. Carrie Jones, and Ann McKiernan.
Thank you very much.
This is a demonstration of Wirecast.
I'm not even going to try. This presentation will focus more on the numbers, but what an outstanding representation of really the holistic programming that we try to
This
present in the
is a
district and what
demonstration
excellent
of
ambassadors for
Wirecast.
our schools. Tonight we will be presenting the third in a series of data reports featuring our performance, our academic achievement and performance. This is on our state assessment program in literacy and mathematics, as it is assessed in grades 3 through 8. And we'll look over our achievement results, we'll look over our student growth figures, and we'll provide you some information regarding our analysis as it relates not only to grade levels and content areas, but also across
This is a demonstration of
student groups, the
Wirecast.
high need student groups, and typically looking at our performance of students of color. But we begin with kind of a public service announcement to describe the score reports that were put into the mail about 2 weeks ago. This is our 5th year with new state assessment platforms, new score reports to go with them, and all the rest. So kind of assuming that our public and our board a little bit more familiar, but the score reports themselves do have some changes this year in
is a
2019
demonstration of
versus
Wirecast.
versus the previous. Some of the things that are the same, right up front, parents will be able to find a scale score. Number itself doesn't have a lot of meaning. It's scaled to something between 2,200 and 2,800 based on grade level, but underneath that is a performance category level. and the familiar categories are only 4, as opposed to historically with the CMT. If people go back that far, there were 5 levels of performance. Now there are 4.
This is a
And so it's important to note
demonstration
that
of
level 3
Wirecast.
is a met grade level standard, and a level 4 is an exceeds grade level standard. The state has done away with that concept of proficiency. So when students are achieving at a level 3, that's a very high and rigorous benchmark. For students who tested within grades 4 through 8, they'll have 2 years worth of data. They'll have their previous year worth of data and then their current, so that the students can and the parents can look at what measure of growth was made in between each years. And the tests themselves
is a
are
demonstration
on
of
a common
Wirecast.
vertical scale. So 50 points of growth between grades 3 and 4, 50 points of growth between grades 4 and 5 would have, relative meaning. There's also more detailed information about how the students performed across 3 large claims in each content area. So in literacy, those 3 claims have to do with overall performance in reading, in writing, and in speaking and listening. And in mathematics, it has to do with concepts and procedures, which is kind of the math skills themselves, problem solving and data analysis, and explaining or communicating reasoning. The part that is new this year is the inclusion of a Lexile score and a quantile score. And these are new measures. We're very familiar in the district with Lexiles. Our teachers and potentially some of our students may be familiar with Lexile scores, a measure of, how would you characterize it, Carrie?
This is a
A
demonstration
comprehension
of
measure
Wirecast.
that enables us to be able to match readers to an appropriate level of text. And then based on if this is independent reading, guided reading, pleasure reading, or academic reading, you kind of choose, am I looking for a higher Lexile or a lower Lexile, based on the Lexile that my own reading level. And then there's appropriately a quantile measure. And there's information on these reports for parents. They can go to a website and they can access more information,
This
and they can
is a
access
demonstration
activities
of
and
Wirecast.
supports to support their children relative to those measures. But in terms of talking about our results themselves, we had, again, I would say this has been a very positive year for us. Our overall literacy results, when averaging the percentage of students at goal across all grade levels, was 70.6. And you see that overall for literacy, we've had a relatively flat performance. Kind of been saying that both in our
This is a
SATs and
demonstration
in
of
our
Wirecast.
in our Smarter Balance, our state assessments for grades 3 through 8. And being a strong number of 70.6, we're okay with flat performance. We certainly like to push it up, but we don't have a bad news story there. We're a fraction of a point off from our 3-year average, so very, very stable overall. It's really within 1 point of our high score, and we haven't really dipped more than a point above or below in literacy. Whereas in mathematics, we've continued to climb over the last 4 years.
Demonstration of
We
Wirecast.
posted a number of 62.4% of students at goal, which, as you can see, is up 1.3 points from last year. And from the 3-year average, averaging all of them, it's 2.3 points up for mathematics. So we'll look at it a little bit more closely across both literacy and math individually. Turning to our literacy scores, and this graphic really is intended not to so much to get you to dwell on the scale score, which are the
This
numbers
is a
there, and you can kind of
demonstration
see
of
how the
Wirecast.
scale score is banded by grade level. So the idea that the blue line at the bottom representing 3rd grade doesn't go all the way up to the top is not an issue. It is by design. Students can only score somewhere within that range. Overall, the takeaway that I wanted to show you from this is that we've had consistent positive gains in grade 8 in literacy for the last several years. Another good news story is that we had a 1-year gain in grades 6 and grade 7, which
This
really
is a
is
demonstration
kind of
of
recovering.
Wirecast.
We had a dip that we reported last year in those grade levels, so you see those bounced back. And it's been relatively flat in grades 3, 4, and 5. But the one area that we're looking at a little bit more closely probably is that grade 4, because it does seem to just slide a little across the 4 years. But overall, strong performance. Our literacy scores continue to place us in the top 1/3 of all districts in the state of Connecticut, something that we've been proud to be able to say for the last
This
4 years.
is a demonstration of Wirecast.
In mathematics, a similar graphic. And again, you see some takeaways are really with the red line in the middle there and the dark gray or black line at the top. Consistent, strong performance and increase over the last several years in grades 5 and 8. In grade 6, we do see an uptick from last year. We saw a slight dip, and we saw that uptick in grade 6. And then we really see generally stable performance in grades 3, 4, and 7.
Wirecast.
Overall, math is up, and we're very pleased with our performance. And we are again in the top 1/3 of all districts in Connecticut for our math performance. So shifting from achievement to take a quick glance at student growth. The state-defined student growth model is rather complex. They have two assigned growth measures that they use, and the one that we typically report on is the average percentage of growth target achieved. So every individual student, based on their grade level and their performance band, if they're at goal, exceeding goal, approaching goal, and whether they're in the high end of that band or the low end of that band, will have an individual growth target, some number of scale score points that they're hopeful to achieve. And that target was set very rigorously when 5 years ago, based on the 60th percentile of all student growth across the state, which is a fancy way of saying 40% of the students off the hop are not going to make their growth target, because that's where the number was arbitrarily set in order to be an aggressive target. The percentages in the bar graphs show the average percentage of growth target achieved for all students averaged up across the district. It was roughly 66 points for both ELA and math, 65.8 for ELA, 67.4 for math.
This is a demonstration
for English language arts,
Wirecast.
it's the highest ever, up 2.2 points over last year. And for mathematics, it was just shy of the highest ever, which was achieved in 16-17, and it was up 1.3 points from last year. Our student growth overall, we could talk more about it if you have specific questions, but it's a good individual measure that we're able to work with teachers on and with individual students in terms of where they stand relative to, say, expected performance.
This is a demonstration of
now taking an
Wirecast.
opportunity to disaggregate the data across the groups that the state defines. We start with our high needs group, which is a relatively newly state-defined category within the last 3 to 4 years. The high needs group represents students with disabilities, English language learners, and socioeconomically disadvantaged as identified by participation in the free and reduced lunch program. And the state really moved away from simply reporting in terms of race ethnicity because they found that the real drivers had to do with these categories. And when we as a district look at them just based on our own numbers, as we've said in the other reports we've given this year, we find that it's really that socioeconomic disadvantage that drives numbers. Overall, I just took the data tables that are in page 8 of your report and tried to give you a visual for this presentation. But you see that our performance trends for both literacy and mathematics among these groups has been increasing over time, which is a good news story by itself. Our literacy performance for the students in the high needs category, 43.6% of students at goal. That is a sizable gap from students not in this category, which is 84.6. So it's like a 40-point gap, but it's up 4 points over the 3-year average. So we're trending in the right direction. In mathematics, in 2019, a percentage of high needs students at goal was 34.5 points. That's about a 30-point gap from students not in the high needs categories, and it's up 5.4 points off of the 3-year average. This is a
demonstration of Wirecast.
The really good news story for us was that whether you broke it down by English language learner, student with disability, or socioeconomically disadvantaged, as you saw in the data table, every one of those categories was up and was the highest ever achieved in the last 4 years. Looking at performance by race and ethnicity, because this is an area that we continue to report on, based really on our district goals and our board requests. We look at our students of color, and
This is a
overall the data table on page
demonstration
9
of Wirecast.
gave the story, which was overall literacy performance, and what you're looking at here are just students of color, students in the state-defined race categories of Black, Hispanic, or 2 or more races only. So it's not all of the diversity that we have in the district. Our literacy figure overall was 49.7%, which was generally flat in accordance with the 3-year average for that student group. And in mathematics, it was 43.5%, which was up 7.7 points, up almost 8 points off of the 3-year average. It's broken down in this graph to show really how it's not race or ethnicity that's driving the performance of our students of color, it's socioeconomic status. So the solid lines in red and blue respectively reflect literacy and mathematics performance versus the dotted line for students not in the high needs category. It's not high needs, but free and reduced lunch. And the dotted lines represent students of color for literacy and mathematics who are socioeconomically disadvantaged, who are participating in the free and reduced lunch program. So you see kind of a stable trend of performance overall in a lower band for our students, matching the performance that we saw for students in the high needs category. But if we eliminate socioeconomic status as a variable, we see very, very high, very, very strong performance for our students of color, and we see generally flat for literacy, which is true across the board,
This is a demonstration
and
of
definitely trending
Wirecast.
upwards in mathematics. Overall, with you combine these groups together, forget about socioeconomic status. In mathematics, we've closed an achievement gap by 5 points over 4 years. In literacy, on this assessment, we've been flat. So that's kind of a short overview of the longer report that you received, and at this time I'd love to open it up for your questions or any discussion.
This is a demonstration of Wirecast.
Who would like to go first?
Can I go first? Oh, thank you. Thank you so much for that presentation. And I find these data to be really interesting and in some ways really encouraging and in other ways a little bit discouraging. And as you know, many of us on the board, this is sort of a drumbeat for us to try to do everything that we can to close the achievement gap. In our board booklet on page 7, there is a scatter plot that demonstrates the correlation between percentage of students participating in free and reduced lunch and percentage of students reaching target in English language arts and math average. And it's a really strong correlation, unfortunately. And West Hartford's doing above the predicted line there, which is great. There's one district, though, that's way above the prediction, and it looks like they have something like 50 or so % in free and reduced lunch, and about 85 to 90% of their students are meeting target. And I'm wondering, who is that district, and how do we borrow their techniques to make sure that happens here in West Hartford too?
So sadly that, and here's an improved graphic for the viewing audience. With that point no longer represented, and sadly that point is actually an error. That was New Canaan, and we had looked at it, and it was an error on my part in terms of it wasn't. It's actually, when I go back and I look at the state data set and look individually and drill in on that one, they actually are reporting they don't have enough students of color or free and reduced lunch students to report. So that was actually a zeroed out, but in the data set that I had pulled, when it came in, for whatever reason, it was showing 50%. So
This is a demonstration of Wirecast.
Seeing that, and Ann and I probably spent a half an hour noodling on it, and then I got your question on the same thing. We went and dug in a little bit deeper today and verified that is actually that was a flaw in the data and not something. So I'm sorry I didn't catch that before I published it. This graphic's actually a little bit better, and just to give it some explanation, there is, at the end of the day, the point that we're trying to drive with this is that there's not necessarily any racial bias in the test.
This is a demonstration
that the
of
confounding
Wirecast.
variable and achievement really seems to do more to do with socioeconomics, which you can probably think about could translate not for every individual student, but in large numbers, can just translate into the amount of time available in a home setting for whether that's studying or independent reading or all those things, even to our young person that came in today, recess and outside experiences that stimulate. And for us as a school district, we're always aware of that and trying to work on being able to provide that wide array of experiences and opportunities for all students. It's a very strong correlation, the whole R-squared variable, to go on a geek math lesson for a minute. It's telling us that 80% of the variability in achievement can be predicted by socioeconomic status. That's dramatic. That's just dramatic. So in West Hartford, you see where we are there, and we are slightly above that predicted line, which is a good place to be on the above side versus the below. We're represented by that red dot, which is seemingly all by itself, clustered somewhere near all these other red dots. All those other red dots represent DIRG-B. All right, so this is the demographic reference group that we compare ourselves to. But it's interesting to note that we're somewhat of a unicorn relative to DIRG-B, because the majority of DIRG-B schools are somewhere between 10 and 20% participation in free and reduced lunch, and we are at 27%. And that's not overall as a district, that's for the tested grades, for grades 3 through 8. There are, however, interestingly, a couple of school districts above us, and it was a little more clustered in the board graphic, because that had every single school and district, and when the state reports it, there are a million charter schools or a whole bunch of schools who have, in all of grades 3 through 8, less than 200 students being tested, comparatively to our 4,300 students being tested. So what I did to do this graphic was I was a little bit more meticulous with it, checked and double-checked the data set, and I eliminated any charter schools or communities that had less than 200 students across all of grades 3 through 8. And so we get a little bit more of a visual that you can see and make some interpretations from. There are still 4 or 5 districts in blue dots that are slightly above us, slightly on par with our diversity. They include Westbrook, Old Saybrook, Mansfield, Wolcott. And for some of them, they're new into this in terms of having that percentage of students with some financial need. Mansfield's not. Mansfield's one that we try to take lessons from. They seem to do very, very well. A lot of that has to do with the location of the school district relative to UConn, and sort of a destination district for some of the professors and things of this nature. So there's a whole kind of UConn factor that happens with Mansfield in addition. I don't know if that answered your question, but it gives you.
Yeah, it does. Thank you. New Canaan. That was definitely
This is a
misreported
demonstration of Wirecast.
or miscaptured. Thank you so much.
Would you mind just flipping back to the other one more? Yeah, thank you. So I guess when we look at this, since that is our collective responsibility to look at that area, and I know the intentions are there, and I know a lot of good work is going on, and I know that there's a lot of good things happening.
This is a demonstration of Wirecast.
What I'm coming back to in my mind is, what can we do to help support a clarifying of where resources are best allocated to help you in the day-to-day work with our kids. So I guess one of my, because it's a solvable problem. It's not a short-term solvable problem, and it's not an easy solvable problem, as we all know. But it is something that can be worked on. So what my interest is helping to position things to help you work on it. So how close can you zoom in on some of the data to help, and I'm not saying tonight, because not to do this off the top of your head, but as we look at this, to look at where the needs are going to be most where things are going to be most helpful. So which schools, which classrooms, which grade levels. I mean, I know those things change from year to year because as community partners look at funding for
This
things
is
that
a
they can do to do
demonstration of
summer
Wirecast.
programs and screening and things that they might be able to do that help support the school system. It's the data that they need to get that funding and things that we can be looking at when we look at our budgets and we try to figure out where resources are best allocated. You know, those are partly data-driven decisions. So over time, as we look in the next couple of months or so, do you have different ways to split this data to help us get a closer look at things
This
so
is a
that when we
demonstration
have
of
these
Wirecast.
conversations of what we can do to support this issue, we can do it from a more informed place?
Go ahead, Paul, make your ask. He's been waiting. He's been waiting for your question.
So one of the things, just in terms of how we can identify large scale, just to start, is of course all of our title schools, which do receive additional funding through the title grants, are identified based on the percentages of students
This is a demonstration of Wirecast.
potentially receiving free and reduced lunch and things of this nature. And so that's one area where we look at additional funding. We look at programs like our tutoring programs, but it's a place where we've stacked certain specialized positions to include. We have two math coaches that are within our title schools that operate. One that operates specifically out of Smith, and then one that is a district position. But we
This
also have
is a
another math coach
demonstration of
that's been
Wirecast.
working across our non-title schools. And we have additional tutoring support, reading specialists, things of this nature. We have a STEM specialist, an IB specialist that are magnet schools, and we fund many of these positions out of those title grants. But some of those things, and Tom knows I was going to talk about the math coaching specifically, because math's been a named area of focus for us. It also happens to be the place where in any of the achievement data that we've presented, whether it's
This is a
disaggregated by race,
demonstration of
ethnicity,
Wirecast.
as you see here, and you see that solid blue line that keeps going up, or I go back a couple of slides to just look at math overall, or whether I go to AP and SAT. Since naming it as an area of focus, investing in it with coaches, we've made gains. And where we've made the most significant gains when we break down the data by school and by class is where we can see really kind of a systemic approach to working with our tutors. And so to me, that's an area, and I know we have a later board report where we're going to get a lot more detail on that, but that's an area where board support has not only been, just very thankfully received, but it's demonstrated payoff, because those are some of our schools where we've really had a good investment of the coaches, because they're spread fairly thin across the whole district. So we're kind of strategic with how we've placed them. We've had sizable gains. I know Ann's done work recently with Title IV funding, getting some more additional after-school tutoring.
This is a demonstration
I know
of
both these folks. I'm going to let
Wirecast.
them talk a little because I know they have good ideas on this topic.
I'll just also add, I think a critical component of the coaches working so well is that the leadership of the school, the principal leadership, the curriculum specialists, the leadership team of the school has worked well together to make sure that there's a vision and a plan for where the coaches are going forward. It's not just, I think there's a perception that coaches are going to work best where there's kind of a dire need, and I'd say it's just the opposite. It's really saying, how are we going to be strategic
This is
about
a
building the
demonstration
entire
of
school? It's sort of
Wirecast.
the idea of kind of lifting the entire school in their math instructional practice versus really thinking about it being a spotty sort of thing. It's lifting the entire team, really the entire school in their math practice, and elevating math practice and targeting, as Paul said, really focusing in. So the places we've seen the most gain, the most student gains, the most teacher instructional enthusiasm and gain are places where that principal, coach, curriculum specialist, along with Mary Listini in our office have, and the
This
curriculum
is
office
a
have really forged a
demonstration of
partnership
Wirecast.
with teachers to say, we're going to be in this together, we're going to work on this collaboratively. And it's been an excellent thing to see, and so we've appreciated that support, whether through town funding or Title I funding.
Thank you for that question, because it it really recognizes the very hard work that we're doing. I really appreciate it because you recognize there are no short-term quick answers. And this is stuff we pour over every day,
This is a
literally. I think I
demonstration
talked to
of
Paul or Carrie,
Wirecast.
Tom in the hallways, and we're looking for those additional supports that we can use. The coaching is a great example because we have payoff. And the coaching is different from the students who are receiving Tier 2 support, which we are also working on. But the coaches actually work with the teachers to enhance Tier 1 instruction, regular classroom instruction. And that's where everybody goes to school, in the regular classroom. So that's where we want to target and make it as strong as possible.
This
And because
is
we
a
have a model we can
demonstration
build
of
on, we
Wirecast.
think we can target additional support to a couple weak areas and lift those areas. So the coaching is enormous. We're also looking at creative uses of Title IV funds, which is a newer grant from the state. It's not one you've probably heard as many times. I think it's only been around. This is the third year. And it's finally starting to get some stability. The first couple times it came out, it seemed like the federal guidance might have been somewhat unclear to the state and therefore unclear to us. But now it is a more solid
This
source
is
of
a
funding that we can
demonstration
rely
of
on. And
Wirecast.
our plans there are to target the Tier 2 interventionists where they are needed. Now, that is not coaching the teacher anymore. Now you're working in small groups with students and making that more reliable. Sometimes you have students maybe come out of a learning lab and go to Tier 2 support for 6 or so weeks. Sometimes they could use 12. And, we need to serve as many children as possible. So I
This
think the
is a
coaching in Tier 1
demonstration
is
of
the
Wirecast.
greatest area with the proven track record. The Tier 2, we've also started to talk about and started to pilot at a very small level last year additional services such as Saturday academies. There's already in the middle school Saturday school. So to have a Saturday math academy for students who can be tapped on the shoulder and say, maybe Learning Lab doesn't work for you because you're in band or choir or orchestra, but maybe you would like to come Saturday. Having a few options. Those are some of the areas that we feel are important.
This
We can
is a
get more time in
demonstration
small
of
group with the
Wirecast.
students. And we're also looking at targeting some new resources. There's a particular one that I've been excited about where one of the greatest struggles in math is when you need to move ahead with the curriculum and then you see there's unfinished learning behind the child and gaps. And so the teachers have, we've worked to secure funding through Title IV and other sources to use a product where teachers can assign the normal homework and continue with the curriculum. Because if they stop that, the kids will
is a
just fall further
demonstration
behind.
of Wirecast.
But at the same time, target on a personal level a product which helps them to go back and fill some of their gaps. So imagine going home and having 10 minutes or so on a skill that's kind of an unfinished learning for you, but yet you're not stopping your forward progress because the teachers often feel they have to do one or the other, stop and go back or keep going and get more gaps. So this is another source. So those are all areas that we want to continue to work on so we can come to you and say there is a track record here, and when we have asks,
is
they're
a
very solid, like the
demonstration of
coaching ask that you'll be
Wirecast.
hearing more about.
So everything that you've implemented, because I think I'm going back, if my memory serves me correctly, maybe 6 years ago or 5 or 6 years ago, we had a blip, and I talk about this like every year actually. We had a blip in 7th grade for math, and it was very noticeable, and it was a large drop. And the implementation
This is a
of services and such
demonstration of Wirecast.
that you guys have put together, not even just for that one particular year, but I guess I'm mentioning that again because it was addressed, it was analyzed, it was management as cause, everything else is effect. They actually took that data and implemented some of these changes. And I'm actually, we're a continuous improvement model, right? So obviously we're always striving to continue. But from, going back
This
even
is a
7 years,
demonstration of
seeing where we've
Wirecast.
come from, we're making those strides. And it's a lot of the things that you just talked about, all three of you actually. So I see a very good story in here under our continuous improvement model. And, going forward, just those incremental you know, because it's not going to happen overnight. You know, it's time. It's constantly going after it. You know, maybe like Mount Rushmore. It's little chips, little chips, little chips, and then all of a sudden, right? So
This is a
I appreciate everything
demonstration
you're
of
doing, and I've
Wirecast.
seen it firsthand. So thanks.
The little chip Paul didn't come out and say directly is he wants middle school math coach for next year, math coaches. That's what will be in the budget for this year when we talk about where we want to focus some of our math work, because it's different work than administrative or teaching also. I don't know if you want to touch on that at all, Paul, but.
I mean, I think I heard a little bit about it, maybe because we talk about it so much in my office.
This is a demonstration of
You know,
Wirecast.
Anne referenced the phrase Tier 1, and Tier 1 is what's happening in the classroom versus what I'm going to do as a pullout or something separate. And having that ability to have someone who can, as a teacher, can meet with you, sit with you, help you plan, watch your lesson, model a lesson with you, debrief with you afterwards. And we have supervisors, we have principals, but just with the ongoings of a school, you can do that for a day for a class, whereas with a coach, you're really talking about a 6-week cycle where I'm kind of in there with you
This is a
regularly,
demonstration
maybe
of Wirecast.
3 days out of 5, maybe 5 days out of 5. Where we've seen the real positive uptick at schools is where we've had principals that have taken those coaches, they've established a culture in the building where all teachers are going to be encouraged to do at a minimum one. So it's not like this isn't the prescription that I'm giving the teacher who's failing. This is just positive professional development for all teachers, and we're going to ask all teachers to go through it once. And once teachers have gone through it
This is
and
a
they're recognizing, hey, I'm
demonstration
working
of
with a colleague,
Wirecast.
I'm working with someone where it's okay for me because it's non-evaluative. It's okay for me to try something and not do well at it and come back and try it again. And it's safe to be able to talk about it in a collegial way and come up with an improvement to where they're asking, can I do a second round of coaching? Can I do a third round of coaching? In the schools where that's taken root, we've seen dramatic improvement in 2 years' time.
This is a demonstration of Wirecast.
Another question. How do we involve the families in helping to drive home the lessons that are being learned at school and to have the families help their children to improve? I think I saw that one of the schools did like a math night where they invited the families in and showed them about the math that the students were learning. Can you give us some more examples of initiatives like that?
This is a demonstration of
I think that's something we
Wirecast.
are constantly looking at. I know our math leadership team with our central office, which is our math coaches, our curriculum specialists, and townwide math curriculum specialist, have looked at and shared models that have been effective. So that's one of the nice things of being in a larger district with 11 elementary schools. We have models we can look at, learn from each other, look at successful models. So we've brought those best practices into our curriculum specialist meetings. Those have been shared, and our principals meetings. Those have been shared and emulated
This
across
is
the
a
district. So kind of things
demonstration
kind
of
of catch on.
Wirecast.
What's worked in one school, they may have to tweak a bit. Schools have at times combined with literacy nights to say we're not going to have families come out more than one night. So each school has its own culture around sort of family nights or evening types of events. So they've made them their own. They might have a STEM night. They might have something combined. So we've encouraged that with our Title I schools. We do have parental involvement funds available for that support. So at schools which have greater needs may not have as much PTO support from an equity lens, we have Title I funds available to support.
This
So
is
we've
a
done,
demonstration of
I think,
Wirecast.
a good job promoting effective practice across our schools, and also tried to put things online. Our website's been redesigned, so we've tried to encourage people to take a look at our website under our curriculum instruction website. We do have family links there as well.
So I'll just piggyback on what Carrie shared. So this, it might vary a little bit from school to school, but schools are having the math nights. They are having literacy nights. We have a couple of schools that are doing CS or they're combining it.
This is a
We have programs within
demonstration
our
of
ESOL
Wirecast.
program where we have parents come in, and some of this is often during the day, and you're reading both in English and also in L1, the student's primary language at home, and sharing some of that exposure and really trying to generate that interest and that passion for reading and literacy across all of our students. We have other programs just in terms of communication. We're trying to help support when you're coming up on November pretty soon. We're going to have all these parent conferences. There's big pushes for getting information out to families. How do you help support your child? Explaining what some of those areas are, what the different resources that we have. Ann was talking about resources that we're looking at, some new products to be able to support gaps at home, and how do we share that information so that folks know how to access it and how to support their child. So that communication push, that welcoming schools. But I think one of the big things that I wanted to add on, maybe even to the previous question, was how do we position students so that they're always seeing themselves through the lens of potential, as through the lens of maybe their, whatever shortcoming or whatever they might be grappling with. And I'm thinking of this young lady that was up here this evening. That was the ESOL student who said, I wanted to come out in my shell more and I wanted a leadership opportunity.
This is a demonstration of Wirecast.
That's an unmeasured part that we can't say enough about. How do we identify those experiences at schools and support them to where students feel compelled to really push themselves, and whether that's push yourself academically, push yourself to get those are the kinds of things I think that distinguish us as a district, that we're able to do that on a larger scale for more kids than the average district. And those are the things that I think make some of the biggest differences in terms of then students seeing their future, seeing potential, seeing themselves as college and career ready, really, and then accessing what we have. But we could talk about a million programs. We could talk about our summer programs for Charter Oak and Smith, the ESOL summer program, the AP boot camp. There's just any number of them that the board very generously supports that help make some of this difference.
I just have a comment. Thank you again for the information. And I very much appreciate you recognizing the need to acknowledge the potential of our young people. I also, too, want to say that I appreciate the areas of growth that you certainly recognize, and with the information you gave as it relates to race and ethnicity, and when you extracted out socioeconomic status, seeing that played more of a determinant, a correlation in terms of performance. And I think that's really important to know, because when it comes, which I'm preaching to the choir, but when it comes to socioeconomic status, that is indiscriminate of race and ethnicity. No one is immune from that. So I think having that mindset, certainly recognizing how when it comes to financial stability of homes, everyone is vulnerable to that, and so that's something we certainly want to be aware of with all of the populations that we work with.
A question. I want to go back to the beginning of the presentation when you talked about the levels, and I want to make sure I heard this correctly. Level 3, high and rigorous benchmark.
This is a demonstration
So what
of
is level
Wirecast.
4 considered, and what do those students look like? I'm just curious because we want to bring all of our students up to met and hopefully exceed. So I'm just want to hear, and also for the listening audience, what can families do in the lower grades? How can they prepare themselves to get to these levels?
Sure. So level 3 is best described as on grade level, at grade level, on grade level, but it is a rigorous standard at grade level. That's really one of the big differences in this testing platform and the new state standards that came out several years back than in the past. Level 4 is above grade level. When we've looked at percentages, I want to say that level 4 is probably for us as a district somewhere in 20%. Of our students are able to hit at that level. And it's not further extrapolated beyond that. There was this whole thing, even, when our state tests came out and they were going to be adaptive, the feds ended up kind of stepping into Connecticut saying you can't go more than one grade level above or below in terms of your adaptive questions. So I think part of the original design was you'd test the student up as high as they could achieve or down as low as to where they were able to access. And for whatever reason, I don't really know the politics of that with the federal government and the state, they moved away from that because they wanted a measure of they wanted it to be basically an assessment of on-grade level testing.
Demonstration of Wirecast.
So those are the definitions. In terms of how do we get more of our students to the advanced range? To me, that's something that's a journey as opposed to a recipe. It's that continuing to excel and persevere, to grapple, to set goals. It's what we're after. We talk about it a lot when we talk about some of our high school reporting, that we want students not necessarily to, not that we want every student to take an AP test or something like this, but we want every student to find that passion and to challenge themselves and to position themselves to be able to see that they can do well, and to recognize, especially, we're looking at grades 3 and 8. With state testing, you may be at the low end of that in grade 3. You might be a struggling reader, but how many folks that were struggling readers were able to come out and be very, very successful people who, with doctoral degrees and everything else? It's not any one little obstacle doesn't prevent you from achieving excellence. It's just a matter of taking it a step at a time, accessing the supports that are there. I don't know. Anything to add to that?
I think that Paul talked briefly about the growth targets, and I think we've been paying more and more attention to educating everyone on what those are. But when children are below grade level, if we can hold them to the growth targets in a 1.5 to 2 years, over a 3-year period, if they're 1 grade level below, over a 2-year period, we hope to have them on grade level. And that's why those growth targets were set so high, and why the range, and I don't want to get too technical, goes up above 100, and there's a lot of other things that you might not need to know. But one thing would be understanding that if we can, and we've done a great deal of disaggregation of the data to show if our kids are hitting their growth targets individually, and where they are and where they could use some help. And I think some more work there helps us to be sure that if a child's in a level 2 with 2 years of steady progress, they would be at a level 3. We have to ensure that they get those growth targets along the way. It's a very tightly coupled system. Is that fair to say? And I think that's another area that we can continue to improve in, the use of those, explanation of those, to say, here's a child at level 2, how can they get to that next level? But by hitting their growth targets for 2 years, they can. So that being said, that I think that's one additional way to look at it. And same for children who are in level 3 who are, kind of seeking to be in level 4. The growth targets also work at that level to bring you up. So understanding what they are and keeping the work rigorous, relevant, and student-centered are some of our early thoughts.
At a very simple level, as a parent, what's the best thing to do is to have a conversation with your child, to have them communicate their reasoning, to have them talk through their math problem, to have them engage in reading a book with you and talking about the book, talking about the character. The oral language piece, the communicating, the reasoning piece is far more important than getting to the next math level, because part of our standards and our expectations for children are about supporting, like our young man did tonight. He supported his claim with evidence. That's what we're asking children to do. He's doing it as a 5th grader. He did it for us tonight. It's talking about your reasoning, explaining your thinking. That's really the number one thing that parents can do to help students get to those levels of growth, no matter where their starting point is. I think that's really having the conversation with children, having them come to school feeling safe, feeling prepared, feeling happy, because that social emotional piece is as critical as well.
Great report tonight. Routine matters.
Demonstration of Wirecast.
Approval of the minutes. Approval of the minutes from the October 1st, 2019 regular Board of Education meeting. Recommendation that the Board of Education approve the minutes of the regular Board of Education meeting of October 1st, 2019. May I have a motion?
So moved.
A second?
Second.
questions or any discussion? Hearing none, we're ready for the vote. All in favor?
Aye. This is a
Any
demonstration of
opposed?
Wirecast.
No, motion carries. Next item is information and reports. Board members, communication and reports, report from other boards and organizations. I think somebody had something.
Not an official communication from another board, but I just want to remind this board of something unique that happened just last week that we maybe took for granted. And this was when the town council debates were held at Charter Oak. Way that Mark will remember, back when Charter Oak was proposed, I wasn't on the board yet, but I was involved as an immediate neighbor and former parent. And one of the promises of that brand new building was that it would be a community center involved in the neighborhood and the whole town itself. And to host that event with the town council debates, have people come see the building, get them in the building. And once again, I see the outside of the building every day when I come home. But to get in there and be reminded how beautiful that auditorium is. And that was only half the story because the curtain was closed. You couldn't see the window. It's just something else when that window is open. Carol, I know your seat wasn't as comfortable as mine, but she was on a folding chair up on the stage. But, even the benches were comfortable. And I do want to give a shout out to the custodians because we still have white walls in that building, an elementary school with white walls. I know I've kind of joked with Principal Melion about that, and he mentioned, well, they're waiting to get moved into the building. They wanted to make it their own rather than have something painted for them. So at some point, I know we'll do something for that, looking forward to that. And so once again, thank you to the board, to the district, and the school staff for hosting that event. It was really something that we wanted to have happen. I look forward to the possibility of many more events like that in the future.
Thank you, Dave. Any other information and discussions? And we've already had our student board representatives report. Any future business? Announcement of future meeting dates. Wednesday will be our next board meeting held on November 6th, 2019, right here in Town Hall. In this room, the Legislative Chamber at 7 p.m. Please note that it's on Wednesday due to Election Day being on Tuesday, November 7th. It should be the 5th. Okay. All right. And followed by the second meeting, which would be Tuesday, November 19th, 2019, right here in Town Hall, in this Legislative Chamber at 7 p.m. Do we have a request for any future agenda items at this time? Hearing none. Move to comments from visitors. Are there any other comments? I don't have a sheet up here. I didn't see anybody else come in. And at this time, we will move into an executive session for a few minutes. So
just a quick legal update.
Okay. So I don't gavel out. I just kind of recess. Okay. We recess. Okay, so we're in recess for about 5 minutes.
This is a demonstration of Wirecast. 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 This is a demonstration of Wirecast.
Since I live in the Connard, I live right over near Cherry.
This is a demonstration of Wirecast.
My boys both went to Connard.
This is a demonstration of Wirecast. 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 This is a demonstration of Wirecast.
Okay. Can I have a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
All right, sorry for the late notice about that and not letting you know.
This is a demonstration of Wirecast. This is a demonstration of Wirecast. This is a demonstration of Wirecast. This is a demonstration of Wirecast.